Welcome back to Becoming Yourself. This podcast shares tools from coaching, psychology, and research to help you become who you want to be. My name is Maev Conneely, and I'm so glad you're here. So today, I want to talk about decision-making paralysis, or I guess any type of paralysis. Specifically, I'm going to share 2 traps that I've come across in my clients and in myself time and time again. The 2 things I am going to share, these 2 really common traps, are micro-optimization, the trap of micro-optimization that leads to paralysis, and the trap of criticism masquerading as critique. Criticism pretending to be critique. So before I jump into both of those, I wanted to say that they're extremely common in people who have very high standards and high expectations of themselves. And that both of these sort of traps that can get us into a state of paralysis, a state of being stuck and feeling unable to get unstuck, unable to take action, and these 2 traps fuel each other. And you'll see what I mean by that in a moment. So firstly, micro-optimization. To explain this trap, I'm going to give you an example of somebody who wants to start selling their drawings on Etsy. So let's imagine this person, they love drawing and they'd like to generate some extra income. They think it would be a cool project. So they decide to set up an Etsy shop. And so a few things have to get done for that to happen. You have to make the drawings, you have to post them on Etsy. And in starting out to kind of start doing that, they start thinking things like, wouldn't it be better if I took the photos in natural light? Wouldn't it be nicer if I took the photos even better if they were taken in a garden, in a beautiful garden in spring, sun is shining, the flowers are out? So this is the trap of micro-optimization. They seem like good ideas. Then this person might start thinking, well, I need some new pens to make the drawings, or some paints or pencils. And then they might think, wouldn't it be even more special if I were to set up one of these fancy cameras that would that would take a video of my hands while I'm drawing? Wouldn't that be much better? And then they think, I'll start drawing something and think, God, I'm not really feeling inspired. Wouldn't it be better if I did it on a day when I felt inspired and when the sun was shining and when I had set up my video so that I could take a video of my drawings? And so they might then, delay to the next day for sun, then they might delay to the next day or the next week to get new equipment to film or new equipment to draw. And you could see this sort of snowballing, that there are always new micro optimizations. Like, wouldn't it be a little bit better if I had an even higher quality camera? Wouldn't it be even better if I got a bit better at drawing before I started selling them? Then I could sell them for more. And you could kind of think, they all sort of make sense. It's not that this person is completely, that they're in some ways possibly good ideas. But these types of micro-optimizations can sort of trap us, because in the end, the reality is that this person has not uploaded anything onto Etsy yet, hasn't opened the shop yet. And months could go by and years could go by, especially with a project like this, which is just an extra thing they're doing. They probably have a busy life on top of this thing they want to start. And there's no deadline. Nobody's going to force them to do it. So you can kind of procrastinate on your dreams and, in a way, procrastinate eternally. It's the sort of worst form of procrastination that isn't avoiding something that's eventually going to happen. It might actually never happen. And it's a sad sort of reality that a lot of people end up in, that because of high standards, because of wanting to do it the best way possible, and wanting to take the first step in the best way possible, and then stopping taking any step out of fear of doing the wrong one, or doing not even the wrong one, but the least optimal one, or slightly suboptimal, or second best step. So That was the first trap that I think is incredibly common. And if it speaks to you, you're definitely not alone in it. The second one I want to talk about is related and would kind of fuel and be fueled by trying to optimize eternally. And that is criticism that is sort of pretending to be constructive critique. So to explain this, I'm going to take a different example of somebody who has to prepare a report. It could be anything, though. It could be a presentation, it could be an essay, it could be a thesis or a paper or any project. It could be a podcast, it could be a film. This person wants to write this report, and they know, because they've heard again and again, that the first paragraph is the most important part of any report, because that is what's going to determine whether people keep reading it and people maybe make decisions quite quickly based on their initial impressions. So this person is ready to start their report and they are starting to write. And as they write, the words are appearing on the page. Their brain says things like, that's not very clear, that's not engaging enough. That word is used all the time. It's a kind of a cliche, or that word is not fancy enough. It's not erudite enough. They're going to think you're stupid, or you don't know how to write, or you don't know the first thing about the topic of this report. You need to change it. It needs to be more attention grabbing, or it needs to be, more engaging, intelligent, original. And we could imagine this person having these critical thoughts that they might be thinking they're helpful thoughts. They're objectively constructive thoughts that are going to improve the paragraph. And it needs to be good. It needs to be important. It's an important paragraph, this first one. So I should listen to them, and I should not leave something on the page that isn't good enough, that isn't meeting my high expectations for this report. But the reality, if somebody were filming this person at their laptop, or this person writing these words out, is that they would write a few words and then delete them, and then maybe write a few more words and then delete them, or go back and edit them, or change it over and back, move sentence 1 to become sentence 2, move sentence 3 to become sentence 5. You get the idea that the critical thoughts here are preventing the person from moving forward and, for example, drafting roughly the whole report and getting an idea of everything they want to say and everything they want to communicate. It also is becoming about how they're coming across to the person who's reading the report, rather than what they are trying to communicate in the report. Whether that is the findings of a research study or plot of a novel, it's detracting from the purpose of what you're writing. And we can imagine this person in this report example might also have fallen prey to the optimization trap. They could have found themselves thinking that they needed to read more and read more widely, read in areas that are unrelated to the report, but that might maybe come up. They might find themselves not wanting to start writing until they're in the kind of best mindset for it, feeling inspired. Maybe they might not start writing because they say something like, oh, but I only have 20 minutes before lunch. I need to have a few hours to do this justice, to do this well. I think we've all had thoughts like that at different points, and it's not that they're all excuses, but I think that in this kind of veil of optimizing or criticism that's actually sort of destructive and preventing moving forward, we often don't realize that it can lead us into paralysis and procrastination. Let's imagine an alternate universe where this person hears these self-critical thoughts, or not even self-critical, but critical of the words that are appearing on the page for the report. And they say to themselves, yeah, this is a bit rough at the moment, but why don't I finish an outline of everything I want to say, and then I'll come back and fix it later. Which sounds very easy to say now, but in reality, if it's something that you really care about and something that you think a lot is riding on, for example, it might feel very uncomfortable to move on to the rest of the report when you think the first paragraph isn't clear. It might feel like it's going against an idea of how you see yourself. If you see yourself as somebody who does things very carefully and very well, you might move on to draft the whole thing and realize, or draft the whole thing in a kind of a rough way or a suboptimal way. You might realize that in part 4 of the report, there's actually some data that's missing. There's something that needs your attention. And you might then be able to reach out to a colleague and say, could you help find this? Or you might go and do the research yourself. You might find an answer to the question yourself. But that person, the first scenario where you're listening to the self-critical thoughts and eternally re-editing the first few sentences of the report, it will take that person a lot longer to get to the realization that there's some data missing. And it might be too late by then. We might be too close to the deadline, and so they just have to shut it down. And you get into a horrible irony where the desperate want to do something perfect, to do something really well, that led to going over the first part again and again, and not moving on until it felt good enough, felt up to standard, or felt exceptional, might mean that the end result is less exceptional, is less good than the person who was willing to do a rough draft and get to the end and see it as not life-changing, but at least it started and it's there, and then they could gradually improve it and maybe incorporate that bit of data for part 4 that was missing. Whereas the person who kind of procrastinated and was paralyzed and re-edited the beginning all of those times will take much longer and then not be able to incorporate these brilliant ideas they had because they're up against the deadline. So if you see yourself in any of those two really common traps, I hope you realize that you're not alone, and I hope you can have some compassion for yourself, because it is your brain trying to protect itself and probably comes out of a place of wanting to do things very well. The problem is that it can stop us from doing anything at all. And one way to kind of avoid that and to step out of paralysis is to try to find out, to be honest with yourself. Am I kind of micro-optimizing here? Or am I optimizing, but maybe I could do it later? And one way to kind of convince yourself of taking that first step, even if you feel not fully prepared for it or that things could be better, is that taking that step will lead to enormous learning. So the person who had the self-critical thoughts and was trying to write the report and couldn't kind of get past the first page of writing because they kept re-editing and trying to make it better and better, that person would have learned so much more from drafting the whole thing and maybe getting some feedback on it and then being able to edit it, tweak it, and improve it, had they been able to been willing to take a chance and to take a step that might be unfinished, unpolished, imperfect. Whereas the person who was not willing to share something imperfect will not get chances to improve and to learn. The same with if you were starting a journey and you want to do it in the most carefully thought out way possible. You could spend forever researching and changing your mind and going over and back and never setting out, never leaving the door, never taking a first step. So I want to leave you with some questions to ask yourself. If you find yourself in these patterns where you end up having to rush at the last minute to get things finished for a deadline, for example, maybe you could ask yourself, how does this time pressure help me? What does leaving this task or leaving any project until the last minute allow me to do? What does it give me permission for? You might be thinking, well, at the last minute, I get better ideas, I get inspired. And I would wonder, if that is true, do you get better ideas at the last second when you're up against the deadline? Or is it that when you're that close to the deadline, your brain shuts up these traps? Your brain says, we don't have time to optimize right now. And so you don't criticize. Your brain doesn't say, we need to make this better, because your brain is saying, we just need to get something done. We need to get something out there. And so it's not shooting all of your ideas down. So you think you have better ideas, or you let the idea appear on the page long enough to improve it, or to just give it space, to let it lead to the next idea that might be better. So if you can ask yourself those questions, it might be interesting what comes out. And I'm going to end with a quote. Before I do that, I just wanted to say thank you so much for listening. And if you found anything helpful in what I've said, I would be so grateful if you share this episode with somebody else who you think might benefit from hearing about these two traps that lead to paralysis. And you can also subscribe to not miss my next episode, and follow me on LinkedIn. I am at Maev Conneely. So MAEVCONNEE1LY, coach. And at the moment, you can actually book a free consultation through my website. So I'm not sure how long that will be possible for, but at the moment, you can get 45 minutes of coaching completely for free. Yeah, at drmaevconneely.com. Now, the quote is by Brianna Wiest. This is from The Mountain Is You. And she says, usually, when we are facing a problem that is circumstantial, we are facing the reality of life. When we have a problem that is chronic, we are facing the reality of ourselves. There you go. Have a great day, and thank you for tuning in.